Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I can see here we have many participants from different countries. I will start with myself and saying hi from Prince Sultan University, Saudi Arabia. I would like to encourage you to do so and share with us your location and time zone at your country now. Here it's 7 p.m. in Riyadh, and I guess it's 11 a.m. in United States. Student, distinguished speakers and guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to welcome you all to this valuable roundtable discussion. My name is Mohammed Azzat. I'm an assistant professor of geotechnical engineering at the Engineering College at Prince Sultan University. I have the honor and the pleasure to moderating this session today. Today we will try to discuss the role of FE exam in the university to career transition. As you may know, fundamental exam, FE, is the first step toward get license or applying for the B exam and be a professional engineer. To give you an insight about today's session, we will try to answer some valuable questions that might be interesting for our student and the fresh grad we have today. We will try to know why civil engineering choose to be licensed, what are the benefits after getting licensed, what are the nature of FE exam and the BE exam, how can the student or fresh engineer can be prepared for the exam, and lastly, how passing FE and BE exam may impact or can impact the engineer career. Well, I would like to extend an special warm and welcome to our distinguished speaker who will be with us today. Our first speaker for today, we have President Dennis Truax, the current ASC President 2022. I'm sorry, your mic is muted, Dr. Dennis. I will remove the mute. Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, I'm off. Sorry. Pleasure to be here. I put a note in the chat, and I want to thank everybody for being here because this is an important conversation, but I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
Thank you, President Truax. President Truax is a professor of civil and environmental engineering at Mississippi State University. During his 41 years, he served as a school director, department head, and professor. He held James T. Watt Inwood Chair for 15 years. He was also director or co-director of the Mississippi Transportation Research Institute for 13 years. Professor Truax is a licensed professional engineer, and he holds national certification as an environmental engineer from the American Academy of Environmental Engineering and Scientists, and as a water resource engineer with American Academy of Water Resource Engineers. As a consulting engineer, he has worked on environmental and water resource management system throughout the world, including the design over 550 water and water waste treatment plants. He holds or has held national leadership position and committee appointment with National Council of Examiners for Engineering and Surveying, NSPE, and the Engineering Accreditation Commission of EBIT. Welcome again, President Truax. It's a great honor to have you today. Our second distinguished speaker for today, Professor J.B. Mohsen. Welcome, Professor.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Professor Mohsen is J.B. Mohsen is Associated Dean of Administration and Faculty Affairs at the University of Louisville, Kentucky, and the past president of the American Society for Engineering Education. Professor Mohsen has prepared and helped engineers pass the BE exam nearly 20 years. He has coordinated and taught the BE review in civil engineering course every fall and spring since 1996. Professor Mohsen is the course director of ASCBE Civil Exam Review course. He has taught courses in civil engineering, including structural analysis and design, surveying, construction material, and pavement design. Welcome, Professor Mohsen and President Truax. It's a great honor to have you today. Well, we will start our today's session. Our first session of today is a presentation of President Truax. President Truax will talk about the leadership and the importance of credential. Floor is yours, President.
May I share my screen?
It's pop up, I guess.
Yep, still disabled.
Yes.
I don't need to, but I'm going to be a whole lot more boring without all the pretty pictures.
No problem at all. Take your time.
You can only look at this face so long before you go to sleep. I'm still blocked.
For sharing?
For sharing, yes.
Okay.
Host disabled participant screen sharing. Yes. Houston, we have a winner. We're good to go. Okay, let me share. And I am. And you should be seeing my title slide right about now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Very good. Okay. Let me do a minor rearrangement. I rebooted my system and it's going through, it's rearranged all my screens. So anyway, again, as I said at the beginning, thanks for being here. This is an important conversation. And while the requirements to practice engineering vary by state and country, there's some commonalities that I want to talk about. And in doing so, talk a little bit about the role of the fundamentals of engineering examination in one's future as an engineer. The important thing to recognize is that engineers are in demand as leaders, that more and more people are looking to us, and this is worldwide. I've traveled throughout the world and people constantly come up to me, regardless where I am, and ask for us as engineers to take the lead in solving problems. They acknowledge and respect the education that we've gotten. They acknowledge and respect the fact that as a profession, we put other people first. And in putting people first, we also acknowledge and work for the benefit of others before we put ourselves first. But in this changing time, the demands on us as engineers are also changing. They're expecting us to be master builders. And what I mean by that is we have to have a comprehensive understanding of what the project involves. In civil engineering, for example, we have to be able to marry a variety of different infrastructure systems into one cohesive, well-operating system. Telecommunications, transmission and collection of wastewater, transportation of goods and services, structural integrities coupled with sustainabilities, and a number of other factors all have to be merged together into a comprehensive infrastructure system. We have to be innovators, which means quite simply that the things you're being taught in school today are by and large somewhat historic, but nevertheless going to be obsolete if we're going to move into the 21st century the way we need to, as a result of climate change, as a result of resources, as a result of the demands people have. It's a changing quality of life. So we have to innovate. At the same time, we have to be respectful of the environment. We have to be respectful of supply of resources. And we talk about being stewards of sustainable infrastructure. It's talking about designing with the idea of making sure that our structures, our projects, the things we do have a greater, longer life.
Sorry for interruption, President. Can you please reshare the screen? It's black now. I'm very sorry for interruption.
That's okay. It stopped sharing?
Yes, stop and share it again, please.
Not a problem. Or at least I say it's not a problem. I haven't done it yet.
Yes,
Are we back and good?
it's still going. It's a black screen.
You're getting a blank screen.
Yes. It's showing, but a black screen.
Yeah. Well, according to my screen, I'm sharing. So I tell you what, because we're on a timetable, let me get rid of the share.
Okay.
And now you have to put up with my face, which may freeze from time to time. And I apologize for that.
No problem at all.
Nevertheless, yeah, but it's just the way things are. And I apologize. Nevertheless, continuing the conversation, we also have to understand risk and uncertainty so that what we do provides the greatest security, the greatest possibility of success and protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public. But these challenges of the future are going to be important to us because the need for new innovations, the need for competent individuals to take a leadership role and to have the skill sets needed to create new and innovative projects is what you're being asked to do. The Burj Khalifa is a remarkable structure, but it used new methods, new processes, new concepts in order to exist. We're going to have to continue with that kind of out of the box thinking in order for us to do that. So what I'm challenging you, and in this part of this conversation, in framing it up as our conversation about the fundamentals of engineering examination, and for that matter, the other examinations that NCAAS provides, I submit to you that these tools, these documents, these credentials help you in your career as a leader. Let's talk briefly about what some of the leadership traits are. To be a leader, you have to be self-confident, you have to be trustworthy, you have to be assertive, self-aware, self-objective, you have to have a cognitive skill, you have to be able to reason, and then you have to, of course, have emotional stability and humor, and you have to have a vision, even a passion for what you're doing. I submit to you that the fundamentals of engineering examination helps you build all of these. Passing the FE exam and proving that you've obtained the minimum competencies, that you've passed a standardized test taken around the world, that this examination will acknowledge and define for you that you've achieved the expectations, the knowledge and understanding required to enter into this profession of work. So knowing that, setting yourself apart by taking and completing the FE, you have illustrated that you stand with all engineers around the world. How could you not be self-confident knowing that? And by knowing that and communicating that and letting individuals know, employers and clients know that you've obtained this standard, that you have validated your education, your skill set, how could you not develop that level of trustworthiness that's expected of that profession? As you're about to move into this, what I call great unknown, as you move to a point of now not just being in school, but moving into the profession, let's remind ourselves what the responsibilities are. First off, what you do as an engineer impacts others, one way or the other, for good or for bad. Of course, we want it to be for good. That impact can be in terms of health, safety, and welfare. That can be if you design a structure or a system incorrectly, it can hurt people, even kill them. So it's a big responsibility that we have. And our failures tend to hurt many people. So we have to be very cautious about that. Socioeconomically, our failures also prevent industry, commerce, even individuals from benefiting from the opportunities that may be available. So we have to make sure that we don't retard or impede economic growth. The third thing that we have to recognize is that we have an impact on the environment. And if we do things in a way that causes the planet to become more damaged than it already is, we're only making the problem worse for ourselves. To practice, you have to have knowledge, you have to have skills, and you have to experience. And the combination of knowledge, skills, and experience all build up to competency. And this is why I take you to the FE. The Fundamentals of Engineering examination validates your competency. It is a reflection of your experience and your education and the skills that you've developed in order to practice this field. What it does for you after graduation is, of course, it's a credential that you carry into the workplace. It will open doors with you, with consulting firms and with agencies. It will say to the people that are hiring you, that are looking to hire you, that here's a competent person. In addition to the degrees you have, and certainly the variations in quality of education around the world, people don't rely so much on what your grade point average is. What they're looking for is standardized evaluation, and the FE exam provides that. It is a universal standard recognized by the engineering profession globally. The other thing you need to recognize is that by moving into this, what we frame as the professional track, moving towards becoming a professional engineer, conducting yourself in a professional way, service before self, protect the health, safety, and welfare, establishing credentials, continuing professional development, professional competency, you will find that you are rewarded, first off, by the fact that you are now more employable. Secondly, your employer will use your credentials to advance their opportunities to do work. And then in the same breath, they will recognize you for that. It's a documented fact that those individuals who have moved along the licensure pathway, that have taken these examinations and continued their professional standard, make more money at the end of the day. They also do more good. Briefly, the Fundamentals of Engineering exam is a hard exam. I took it in a very different format many, many years ago, and I certainly never wanted to take it again. It'll be the same way with you. The good news for you is it's a computer-based test. It's 110 questions. The exam encompasses about 6 hours. Of that 6 hours, about 5.5 hours are devoted to the examination, and the other things are either breaks or orientations or whatever. Be aware that there are actually 7 examinations in the FE that you can pick from: chemical, civil, electrical and computer, environmental, industrial and systems, and mechanical engineering are the 6 primary tests. And then they have what they call other disciplines, which is really a general exam. It's what we used to refer to as the general exam. In fact, it's what I took when I sat for the FE, or what was then the EIT exam, so many years ago, back when the dinosaurs roamed the planet. Advice: take it in your area of specialization. The general exam, because of the way it's constructed, tends to have a lower pass rate. So find your exam, focus on the exam, and take it. The civil exam is different than the mechanical exam, which is different than the environmental exam. So if you have to be taking civil engineering, but you focus maybe a little more over in environmental engineering, you need to look at the specifications on the exam and make sure that your program has prepared you for them. They are different exams. I'm a civil engineer with an environmental and water resources expertise. I probably, if I was looking at it, would advise my students that I taught to take the civil engineering exam rather than the environmental engineering exam, because my program doesn't prepare them for certain aspects that they need to have, if because another reason they're actually getting a civil engineering degree. I also suggest that you keep in mind the big picture. The exam, again, is tough, and it's tough for a reason. Pass rate on a civil engineering exam this past year was under 70%, closer to about 65%. It's tough because we want to make sure that it's rigorous, that it indicates that you've achieved a minimum level of technical competency as you start your pathway into the engineering. You have to be motivated. That means keep your eye on the target. Make sure that you're focused on developing yourself as a professional, and this is one of those steps. At the National Council of Engineers, Examiners for Engineers and Surveyors, we talk about a 3-legged stool: education, examination, and experience, and they all go together. The FE is that examination piece, but let me also remind you that that is the starting point, not the ending point. Your education is the start, the FE is part of the start, and then you continue to grow and develop. I'm going to try one more time to share screen, and maybe it will feed. And if it does, that's great. And if it doesn't, then we're going to try it. Just go that way. The reason I'm going to throw this screen up, again, I hope it applies. I suggest if you will, go to ncees.org, and you'll find that they have exam preparation table materials. I suggest that you get registered with them and you avail yourself of these materials. What do they have? They have a study book. They have a manual that of old tests that you can use. I also suggest that you look at the reference handbook. The current reference handbook is what you'll be using. This is a closed book exam. You're given a manual, a reference manual that you use on, parallel with the exam in the computer environment, but you need to be familiar with it. The single best advantage I can give you as far as taking this exam is know the manual, know what's there, know what's not there. By the way, if it's not there, you're probably not going to be tested on it, so there's no reason studying. If it is there, you need to make sure you understand it. But it's important to know where in the manual it is, because it's hard to search through it. The other thing to keep in mind is that on the website, if you go to the website, you'll find, and I'm hoping this website loads by now, because at the top, I did a screen capture, and at the top of the screen, you see the web address for the exam preparation materials. You click on it, you define get the materials for your particular discipline. Watch the CBT, that stands for Computer-Based Testing Demo. That'll give you a handle on, or some experience, some level of comfort with that exam. And then to close, with the little time that I have left, let me challenge you. It's important for you to take this exam for yourself. It's important for you to take this exam because of the benefits it will provide to you as you move forward. Again, it documents that you've achieved a level of education recognized around the world as the entry-level education for this profession. And it's important that for you to do that as you move into the workplace and as you move into society. As you take on the mantle of a leader in this profession and in your society, this document, this certification, this validation of your expertise gives you authority to speak in a way that not having it prevents you from. And as a result, I challenge you to take the exam for that reason. Certainly at the same time, this exam helps give feedback to your program. They get documentation from NCEES as to how everybody performed. You're not singled out, but they'll know how everybody performed twice a year. And that gives them the feedback to know whether or not the program is educating the people coming behind you in a way for success. I know this program and the programs that each of you are in are striving to do the best they can, but the resources they have to ensure your success, this is a good way of letting them know that they have done the job that you've asked them to do. So with that said, to close, let me say it's important for you to embrace the professional mantle, the concepts and requirements for professionalism. Examination is part of that. Submitting yourself to examination and evaluation is a part. Never be afraid of taking an exam. The only people that resist taking examinations are those people that are afraid they don't know and don't want to find out. You want to know. We have to know in engineering that you're competent. This is the starting point to do that. And with that, I will again, hopefully some of that made it through. And Mohammed, that's the end of my presentation.
Okay, thank you so much, President Truax, for this valuable presentation and advices. I hope the student not get panicked after knowing that this exam is very hard. Dr.
Passable,
Mohsen is
but
smiling.
passable. People do pass the exam.
Yes,
you just have to work hard.
And hopefully by this session they will know how to pass it. Professor Mohsen is smiling. He has the keys.
Yes.
Yes. Professor Mohsen will talk us today about the nature of the exam, how to pass it. Professor Mohsen, as I introduced him, he's the course director of ESC review course. Floor is yours, Professor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to try to share the screen with you.
Yeah, it's a bit.
And do you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Just leave it like this. Okay, so thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be a part of this roundtable, and I really, truly appreciate the invitation. But it's also an honor to be speaking at a roundtable with the ASCE president, President Truax. So that truly is an honor for me. So Dennis, thank you very much for those valuable comments. My presentation is going to reinforce some of the things that Dennis mentioned, and I will be concentrating my slides, talk about civil engineering FE exam, because I'm a civil engineer, but what I have to share with you actually it pertains to all the different disciplines, FE disciplines, and as President Truax mentioned, there are different disciplines which we will talk about, and you should choose the FE exam in your own discipline. But let's talk about the agenda. I only have 15 minutes, so let's use it wisely. And I will do the best that I can to share the information with you. And then there is some time at the end that we can of course, answer your questions. I would like to, during these few minutes, talk about the current format of the FE exam. It is indeed a computer-based testing. So I will talk to you about that environment. When you walk into the testing center, what to expect and what that day would look like. Then I will talk about the NCEES Civil Reference Handbook, and that is the reference handbook that Dennis mentioned in his talk, and I have some comments to make regarding that. Then I will talk about the different types of questions that you may see during the exam. And finally, I will share with you some strategies how to effectively prepare for the exam. And of course, those strategies I will share with you throughout the presentation. So let's begin with the fact that the FE exam is, as I said, it's a computer-based exam. It is available all year round. But you have to be careful about that. Yes, it is available all year round, but there are only available in certain windows of time. And no one can take the FE exam more than 3 times per year. So keep that in mind. It is administered at NCEES. By the way, NCEES stands for the National Council of Examiners for Engineering and Surveying. And in Saudi Arabia, the exam is given under an agreement with Saudi Council of Engineers. So you need to be aware of that. The exam itself takes 5 hours and 20 minutes. However, you need to be aware that the appointment that you make will be for 6 hours. So you will be at the test center at least 6 hours, but 5 hours and 20 minutes of that time is spent on the exam. Dennis briefly mentioned that this exam is closed book. Absolutely, that is an important point that you need to keep reminding yourself. It is closed book. You may not take any notes or reference with you to the exam. There are 110 questions on the exam. However, you will have access to an electronic reference handbook. So if you can picture, you're sitting taking the exam and there is a computer monitor in front of you, and half of the page are the questions and the other half is a digital electronic reference handbook, which is available to you during the exam, and that is the only reference that you have. So it is absolutely necessary that you are very, very familiar with that reference handbook. And remember, I told you I'll share with some strategies how to be successful on the exam. Well, here it is. The first step is that as soon as you can, get a copy of that FE electronic reference handbook. You can download it free of charge from the ncees.org website, or you can purchase a copy, a printed copy, but you can, as I said, download it free of charge. And in the university, at the University of Louisville, where I teach, we actually encourage our students when they are sophomore in the second year of civil engineering program. We encourage, and some courses require that our students actually download that book or purchase a hard copy, because we want them to study during the years that they're studying civil engineering in our program. We want them to be exposed to this handbook. It does two things. One is that they get used to it, and by the time they graduate or they're senior and the time they take the FE exam, they already really are very familiar with this handbook. But the second objective, and this is very important, because this handbook does not have any example problems. It is simply a series of equations and formulas in different topics. So our students use that as a summary of the equations in various classes that they take, and that's also very valuable. I invite all of you to go to the ncees.org website and try to get that book. It's not very easy to find, I will tell you that. It takes 3 or 4 clicks to get to it. However, when you go to that site, there is a red button on the very top, top right. It says My NCEES, My NCEES. And if you click on that, they ask you to create an account, and please go ahead and do that. They just want your email address, and that email address will create that account for you, and then you can navigate through their system and get a copy of that handbook. At the very bottom of my slide here, I have provided you with a link which gives you it's a book. It's an examinee guide. And if you get a copy of that examinee guide, it will really give you a lot of the information that you need about the exam. All right, now, time management. Speaking of time management, Dr. Ezzat, how am I doing with time?
Take your time, Dr. Moss. I can see here in the chat box, there is a revolution. All of them asking for the slides, and also the slide of President Truax. Take your time. We are very interested with this presentation.
Okay, very good. So let me tell you what happens when you walk into the testing center. Of course, they will ask you to provide them with identification, and all of that will be done. However, when you actually go into the test room, the room where you actually will take the test, this is very important. The only thing that you can take with you is glasses, eyeglasses with no case. You can take a calculator with no cover, and it has to be an approved calculator. And then you can also have a light jacket or a light sweater with you. And nothing else. Nothing to drink and nothing to snack on. So, and no watch. You cannot take a watch with you, no electronics, certainly no cell phone. So you need to be prepared for that. Remember, time management is very important. You have 5 hours and 20 minutes to answer 110 questions. So you don't have a watch and you don't have your cell phone. Well, on the screen, there will be a clock which is continuously running and is telling you how much time you have left. So you need to train yourself to use that effectively. Optional break will be given to you when you have completed almost half, when you've finished 50% of the exams, approximately 55 questions. They will give you an option to take a 30-minute break. I recommend that you take that because you will need that break. But remember, when you take the break, you must submit the question that you've already answered. And when you come back after the break, you have no access to those questions anymore. So what about another strategy to be successful on the test? Remember, the only thing you have access to is the electronic handbook. So you need to familiarize yourself with the handbook, what is where and what's included. However, you also need to train yourself how to search. It's a PDF, searchable PDF file. So how to search through that handbook to find what you need to answer any specific question. So that's another thing that you need to do. The equations have certain units, certain nomenclature, characters are used, and you really need to be familiar with that. You don't want to go on the day of the exam and be surprised because the equation, you know the equation, but they use a different symbol. By the way, I'm not drawing these lines. I think somebody else is drawing these lines. Otherwise I would get rid of it. But anyway, the bottom of the slide, expect the unexpected. Be prepared to answer questions from topics not included in the handbook. That is not very very often, does not happen very often, but there are certain things that that you are expected to know, and it's not necessarily in the handbook. So be prepared for that as well. When you take the exam, when you're preparing for the exam, one of the things that you must do is to go to the ncees.org website and look up the specifications for the specific exam that you're taking. And as Dennis mentioned earlier, there are different topics, for example, mechanical engineering, chemical, civil, environmental, and so on. Each one of those disciplines has an FE exam. So the one that you're taking, you must look up the specifications. There are about 3 or 4 pages long, but they tell you exactly the general topics and the details of what you're expected to know in each of those subtopics. In terms of civil engineering, what I have on the screen, these are the topics that will be included in the civil exam. And again, there are similar slides like this for the other disciplines as well. And then what NCEES tells you, in front of each topic, they also give you the number of questions. For example, engineering economics is the first topic that I have listed, and you can expect anywhere from 5 to 8 questions related to that. Statics, 8 to 12 possible questions. Mechanics of materials, 7 to 11. And you can read the rest of this yourself, but these are guidelines that are given to you, and I recommend highly that you look at this very, very carefully. Now, what I'd like to do the rest of the time, and I have another slide that I want to share with you as well, but what I want you to do is take a look at these topics. For example, statics, that's a course that all civil engineers take, and also several other disciplines, they take statics in their sophomore year. That's a big part of the exam. At least 8, possibly 12 questions relate to statics. So from the sophomore year course that you take, that has a heavy weight on the FE exam. And you can look at different courses, mechanics of materials, for example. That also is a second semester sophomore or first year junior level class. So there are 7 to 11 questions there. You must take every course that you take seriously, and keep in mind that in 2 or 3 years, you will take the FE exam, and you need to know those topics that deal with that. And you can just go down the list. Structural engineering, for example, geotechnical engineering. These are sub-disciplines within the civil engineering exam. If we need to, I will come back to this slide, but I really do need to cover, I would like to cover this slide, and this is the last one that I have here. I want to share with you the types of questions that you might see on the test. The traditional type of question is a multiple choice question with 4 possible answers, with 4 choices. And one of those answers is correct. So multiple choice question, 4 choices with a single correct answer. That is the most traditional type of question, and the majority of the questions on the test will be in that form. However, when the FE exam became CBT, computer-based, then there were opportunities to ask people, candidates, to different kinds of questions. Now, you need to be familiar with that. One type is multiple correct options. So you may have a question with possibly they give you 5 or 6 answers, and then they want you to identify all the correct answers. So 2 or 3 of those 5 or 6 choices may be correct. It's more than one correct answer. Then there is a point and click, which requires person who's taking the exam to click on a part of a graphic to answer. So you need to identify the correct part of a graph, for example, or a table or a chart. The third type is drag and drop. It requires the person taking the exam to click on and drag items to match, sort, rank, or label. I'll give you an example. For example, you have a water treatment plant, and there are different components to this water treatment plant. So they give you a figure for each component, and then they give you a list of names of the different components, and they ask you to click and drag the correct name to match where that component is. And then the last item that I have here, fill in the blank. So they ask you a question and they give you a blank space where you enter the word that's missing or the answer, numerical answer. And then you have to remember that all questions, including alternative item types, these different types that I mentioned, they are scored either correct or not correct, and there is no partial credit given. I believe that we are on time, and I want to thank you for your attention. There probably are several questions on your mind that I'll be happy to answer later in the presentation. So that concludes my presentation, and thank you so very much.
Many thanks, Professor J.B. Mohsen. Really, it was a very nice presentation and very informative. I guess the students feel now more comfortable after have a brief about the exam. I will give a short brief now about the Saudi standard. As Professor Mohsen explained, the organizations that host the NCEES exam here in Saudi Arabia is the Saudi Council for Engineers. I will give you a quick insight about the nature or the requirement for the exam here in Saudi Arabia. Can you see my screen now? I guess yes. Okay. First of all, here, as I mentioned, the Saudi Council for Engineers, SCE, is a hosting organization for professional examination in Saudi Arabia. SCE providing two types of exam here. First, the international exam, which is NCEES, that President Dennis and Professor Mohsen talk about. And the second one is another exam provided by a national center for assessment. Today, we are talking about the NCEES. Here in the Saudi Council for Engineers, they have four types of the exam: Fundamental of Engineering, FE, Fundamental of Surveying, FS, Principle and Practice of Engineering, BE, and Principle and Practice of Surveying, BS. All types of exam are available online throughout the year. Online exam should be at the test center. Here in Saudi Arabia, there is two centers in Dammam, one in Dammam and one in Riyadh. As all of us know, the fundamental engineering exam is the first step in the process of becoming professional licensed engineer. And let me hide this. Okay. The main benefits of passing this exam, according to the Saudi Practice of Engineer Profession Regulation Law 2021, engineer professional degrees consist of 4 degrees. First is the engineer degree, which is just finished the undergrad engineering degree, the baccalaureate. Second is the participating engineer. The qualification needed to promote it to the second degree is to pass the FE exam. The third degree is professional engineer who passed the BE exam, passing the BE exam, and have more than 5 years of experience. And the last degree is a consultant engineer who has 10 years of experience plus after passing the BE exam. So as a student, a senior student or fresh grad, passing the FE exam may give you an advantage to be promoted to the second degree, which is a participating engineer at early stage. What is the requirement here to attend the exam? According to NCEES requirement, a valid membership with the Saudi Council, SCE, valid ID, pay the exam fees, and select the desired exam discipline. As Professor Mohsen explained, almost all the engineering discipline are provided. We are talking mainly today about the civil engineering discipline. However, you can apply for other discipline if we have attendees from different majors. For the eligibility term for the BE exam, baccalaureate degree from accredited institution, valid SCE membership, valid Saudi national ID, passing the FE exam for sure, minimum 5 years of certified professional experience after graduation, application through the SCE website. I provided the link here, and I will share the slides with you. And lastly, the payment fees. We are pleased to announce that Prince Sultan University, PSU, we are working on an initiative here in Saudi Arabia by providing a review book and preparing course. And we would like to know more from our distinguished speaker about their advices for preparing such course. The main aim of this 2-volume book is to create a question bank to be like a training tool for our student to practice on the nature of the exam. I can see here in the chat box, many of you are asking about the nature of the question. This is all from my side. I will. I love to save some time for the discussion. I know all of you have many questions for our distinguished speaker. Now we will start with our open discussion for the panel members. Then at the last 15 minutes, we will open the question for public. Please keep your mic muted. If you have any question, please share it with us in the chat box. Okay. How are you, President and Professor Truax? President Dennis, your mic is muted. Yes. Okay. It's unmuted now. First, I will start with you, Professor J.B. Mohsen. Why engineers, especially civil engineers, choose to be licensed? And in your opinion, what is the main benefits the engineer may gain after being a BE or passing the FE exam?
Well, there are many, many advantages, and I think Dr. Truax summarized some of those advantages, but you know, there will be projects that you work on as a young engineer, and you spend many, many hours doing the work on it, but if you're not licensed, you don't have a stamp to actually put your name on it, and you do all the work and you do a very good job, but you have to give it to someone else in your office to stamp it, and someone else will put their name on it. So that's one thing, to actually be able to be able to get credit for the work that you've done, and also be proud of what you have done. Also, it is the welfare of the public. PE license will provide you with the information and authorization to act in an ethical manner and to protect the welfare of the public, people, and entities that actually use the structures that you design or various components that you design. So I will leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. President Dennis, what do you think?
I'll add the reason civil engineers, more than other disciplines in the United States, follow the licensure pathway is largely because the work that we do is regulated at a government level. Licensure is required for the work that we do because of the direct impact we have on protecting the life, safety, and health, welfare of those individuals in society. And as a result, because litigative relief, suing somebody doesn't compensate somebody that's lost their life because a bridge collapsed or because a water treatment plant failed to provide safe water, is very little compensation. It's not appropriate. So civil engineers have to prevent the damage that's done to individuals in a way, again, because of the impact it has. And that's, I think, a principal part of what drives civil engineers to move through the licensure pathway. The second piece, the reason civil engineers do this, is that in many disciplines, there's an industrial exemption. And we see this around the world where certain industries, many industries, say, well, we'll take care of the liability or the litigation side in civil, and so we don't worry about you having a license, or we don't worry about you following that professional. And let me say to those who think that way, you're wrong. It is clear, it has been clearly demonstrated in the courts that an individual who has pursued and maintained a level of professional competency through examination, experience, testing, through education, excuse me, and have documented that, have quantified that those individuals, first off, don't make mistakes. And when they're in a litigation, they tend to succeed over those people that don't. They tend to be found that they've done the good job, that they've done the best they could. And as a result, even those individuals who employers say you don't need it because we'll protect you other ways, you still need to get it. Here's the third piece, and I'll leave it for everybody, regardless of discipline. If you move into a profession, then it's your profession, it's your skill set, it's your ability, it's your credentials. And as such, you're no longer beholden to your employer. You now become an individual professional who is employed. But if you find yourself in an environment where your employer is doing things you don't agree with, you can leave that employer with little concern that you will find other employment. You will. I had an individual many years ago that called me, was hired and got a horrendously large salary. And he called me and said, I know why they're paying me what they're paying me. They want me to falsify federal and state documents. And I can't do that professionally. I can't do that. This is a person right out of school. This is somebody that's 23 years old, has made a horrendous amount of money for about a month and a half. And I told him, I said, you have to leave. Don't take anything that isn't yours. You have to leave. And within about 10 days, he had another job. Of course, the company he's working for ultimately went bankrupt as a result of the violations that ultimately got piled upon them by the state and federal government. So professional pathway, that's the best way for everybody involved.
Thank you, President. In your opinion, what is the best timing for the senior student or fresh grad to apply for the FE exam? Which is time might be good for accessing the exam? During the study, after graduate, what do you think?
That's easy. Do it as early as you can, but I do have to caveat that just a little bit. When you're in college, you're used to taking examinations. You take them to the point of distraction. So you're used to exams. You're in a test-taking mode. You're in a learning mode. And so studying and the rigor and dedication required for studying in my case, is something that you can easily embrace and proceed with. So I suggest you take it while you're in college rather than waiting afterward. Now, there's some trade-offs here. First off, I recognize that last semester of your senior year can get very, very busy. And so take it immediately after school, that's okay. Though I will say that while you're job hunting, it's better to have taken and passed the FE than to not have it. Of course, it's worse to take and fail the FE, but that's another conversation. So the idea of waiting till you graduate, I wouldn't wait very long afterwards if you have to. In the civil exam, on the other hand, I don't know how early you would allow somebody to take the exam, but I wouldn't take it too early. if you look at the civil engineering exam and the environmental engineering exam, which I've also looked at, a lot of the material that you're tested on comes in your senior year. In fact, maybe coming in your final semester or final quarter. So for that reason, you don't want to take it your junior year if it would be allowed. And in some universities it is. You don't want to take it too early in your senior year. I suggest your last semester. I suggest within reason, and for that reason, I think your probability of passing is as high as it's going to get.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you, the President. Professor Mohsen, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. The sooner the better. And I think in terms of civil engineering, yes, that's correct. There are certain topics, and for example, concrete design, reinforced concrete design, and some steel design. Some of the other courses, there are senior level classes in at least in the curriculum in the United States. So taking the exam, the end of your senior year or right after you graduate, that's my recommendation, because the FE exam, yes, it is difficult, but if you think about it, and I showed you the list of the items the topics, so that is fresh in your mind at the end of the senior year, and the sooner the better. Now, I saw one of the questions in the chat. Someone asked, could I wait 1 or 2 years? No, don't, because you will not retain all of that information. Because what happens is that after we graduate, we get a job and we concentrate on that specific task and and whatever the job entitles us. If you're a structural engineer, you do structures. You don't really do much transportation, and vice versa. So you will actually not remember as much of the basic material that you learn in sophomore year, junior year. So the bottom line is the sooner the better, the easier it will be for you if you don't wait too long.
Thank you, Professor. This will guide us to another question about the nature of the question. For the fundamental exam at the beginning, some of the students may expect a deep level of the in terms of question nature. So, what is the knowledge level that's required to answer the fundamental exam and the nature of the question? What do you think, Professor Mohsen, about this?
Well, certainly there are. What I recommend is that you get a copy of a sample exam that NCEES publishes, and this sample exam consists of questions that have been on previous exams, past exams, and this is a collection of the questions that NCEES will not use anymore, but it has been on previous exams, and that will give you an answer to the level of the questions. And so NCEES has those sample exams, and then there are also other sample exams and question types that really answers your question. I would say that most of the questions are, I would say, basic. They are not necessarily difficult. If you think about, for example, concrete design, reinforced concrete design, the level of questions, to give you an idea, it would be what you will see in the first 4 or 5 chapters of the book, not any further than that. And that could be true with a lot of the other topics and textbooks that you deal with.
Yes, totally agree with you, Professor. President, can you elaborate on this?
I think Dr. Mosen has captured it really well.
Very good.
How do you know that you're ready for any examination? How do you know how hard it's going to be? As he said, for the very reason that these questions get asked, NCEES and others provide test manuals, review materials, and a variety of things that you can look to see. I think it really is a matter, though, if you look at it, because of the exam is looking at fundamentals of engineering, even in the specialty areas within the subdisciplines. In civil engineering, it might be geotech or water resources or environmental engineering. Even within those sub areas, it's going to be pretty basic, the level of testing. If you're asked to do a design on a treatment plant, my area of expertise, it's not going to be a kinetics equation as much as it's going to be more of a load factor based type equation, more of a what I call cancel the units type of problem. What they're really testing is if you've been exposed to and have enough competency that you can then learn what it takes to continue. The idea is the fundamentals exam is establishing a foundation upon which your continued education and your expertise, your experience will be built to ensure that you're competent to practice and that you do no harm in the work that you do.
Very good. Thank you, President. What's your recommendation or advice? How can the senior student or fresh grad can be prepared for the exam? How can he start studying? From which point? Can you please advise us about this?
Well,
are you talking about the FE?
Yes, for the FE mainly. Then we will go for the BE at the next level.
Yeah, I'll let the President Truax to answer that.
But yeah, and what I've always recommended and what I've in effect done with the students at my program is had them take the practice exam that NCEES provides. It costs a little bit of money to get it. There are alternatives. The people that sell review manuals, PPI, for example, in the United States is a big provider of FE and PE review documentation. But and they also have information that you can go online and take practice exams. But practice the exam, take the practice exam. But here's the piece that I really want to get to. Whichever practice exam you take it cold. What I mean is don't study for it. Get the exam out, take it. And then what it will do for you is identify your strengths and your weaknesses. The next step then is knowing what your weaknesses are, define why they're weakness. In my program, for example, the vast majority of the students that are taking the exam have a weakness in transportation design. I asked them why, and the answer is they never took the class. We have a program that allows individuals to select coursework as they move through, and they don't have to take all of the classes. So if you have a particular weakness, and it's because you never took the class, accept the fact that that's a weakness. Don't try and remediate it. Don't try and learn it, but rather focus on those areas where, let's say, if you've had a concrete class and you didn't do very well on the concrete section of the practice exam, we'll go back and figure out why you did, study to repair or remediate what it is that you didn't understand, and regain the knowledge that surely you had at one point and expand on it so that you're successful. The other thing, of course, is that those areas that you do really well in can be put off, can be deferred until the week or so before the exam is to be taken. And then you kind of review those, you go over that material. So the strategy is to define your weaknesses. Taking practice exams will help you do that. And then in those practice exams, again, if you're really using them as an education, as a learning tool, focus and prioritize those areas that you should be competent in but didn't do so well in, followed by those areas that you have some knowledge in and see if you can expand it, and then go back and review those areas that that were strong and that you performed well in. And at the end of the day, if you do that, you'll make a 70 or better and pass the exam. Which, after all, you don't have to worry about making a 90 on this thing. It just passed the exam, and that's a score of 70.
Thank you, President. What do you think, Professor GB?
Well, you know, I was looking at the list, the items that I had on that one slide, slide number 6, and one of them is construction engineering. And in the US, I can tell you, civil engineering programs do not necessarily cover construction engineering unless they have a construction engineering segment, or they offer a specialization in construction. So that is one, at least my students, that's one part that they don't really get much exposure to. And again, for in general, I will tell you, you look at that list that I provided and compare that with the series of classes, the coursework that you take in your particular program, and then you can identify that the sections that are missing. For example, and I gave you an example, construction engineering. If that's not one of the courses that you take, well, then you need to take steps to learn that aspect for the exam, because it will be in the exam. And actually you can just use that logic to increase your chances of doing better on the exam.
Very good. What do you think, Professor Mohsen, about the review manual and the review courses? Is it beneficial for the students, mainly for the student who would like to apply for the FE at the early stage? Do you advise to enroll in a review course, for example, the courses provided by ASCE, buying some kind of review manuals and starting self-studying, or what do you think in this? Yeah,
I can. Let me talk about the PE review course. The review course for the PE that ASCE offers, one of the advantages of enrolling in a review course, whether it's ASCE or any other review course, one of the advantages is that in those review courses, we identify the topics that have the most probability to show up on the test. Because if you just simply purchase a review book, the review book, there are some on the market, but those review books are very, very comprehensive. They basically, and there is one PPI publishes, everything there is about civil engineering is in that book. You do not need all of that information. Not all of that is not on the PE exam. So the advantage that a review course will provide you is that we tell you within each subdiscipline, within each topic, what are the most important elements that you need to concentrate on, and not everything there is about that topic. And I think that will help you manage your time, review time, and spend more time on the things that would have a high probability to show up on the test. And you just concentrate on reviewing those, practice those, and not the topics or the subtopics that may not show up on the test very often. So that's one of the recommendations that I have, and that's one of the advantages of why we recommend that you take a review course. And you know, this review course also will give you some discipline. We for example, we specify how many hours a week you need to spend time studying, and we give you the topics for that week, and you say, well, spend so many hours working on this this topic, and here are some homework problems, here are some example problems, and these are the equations that you need.
Yes, thank you, Professor. President Truax, what do you think? Do you advise of any type of preparing a study?
I couldn't agree with more. ASC does not offer an FE review program at this point in time. I will say that I am working really hard to correct that omission in the stable of webinars and tutorials that ASC has. But right now it looks like we're going to partner with a reputable organization that offers it and is in place. And so I'll go ahead and say institutionally, PPI, and I wish I could remember what PPI stood for, but if you go online and look for it, you'll find it. They do a host of review materials, and they have online study, and they're a really good program, and they have an online course as well. The value of having a good review program is that the individuals doing the review have done their homework. They understand what's going to be on the exam, and they're not going to try and teach you the information. They're reviewing the information with you. But they're going to be reviewing the information that's pertinent. As I said earlier with the FE, getting a copy of the reference manual will define for you what equations, what nomenclature you're going to need to know, and more importantly, what you don't need to know. So you only study those areas that you need to know. A review class, a review course helps you do that. Ramping up to the next level, certainly if you're looking at taking the P exam or the PPE exam, Principles and Practices Examination, we commonly call it the PE exam because for most states that is the final examination to actually get licensed as a professional engineer. That PPE exam, yes, I think I would be looking at a substantial review course for two reasons. One, there's a certain academic component to that class. And so reviewing the coursework that you had years ago isn't a bad idea. Secondly, again, trying to emphasize and focus on the test taking techniques as well as the test taking method materials that have to be covered is important. As Dr. Motion said, the idea here is that you want to prioritize and use your time effectively. You want to study smarter, not study harder. And these programs help you do that.
Very good. My last question, President, what is the difference between the BE license of United States and the overseas or in any other countries? We have, yes. We have,
how long do we have? It is okay. The United States. Yes. We have 50 states. We have the District of Columbia. We have 3 possessions. So we have 54 jurisdictions, all of whom are part of the National Council of Examiners for Engineers and Surveyors, have a board, a regulatory unit that oversees licensure and the practice of the profession within those jurisdictions. The NCWS has what we call a model law. And I invite you, you can go find what the model law and the model rules are on the ncees.org website. That said, I don't think any state or jurisdiction in the US follows that model law explicitly. Now, we do have what we refer to as a model law engineer, which is somebody who subscribes to that, but some add higher standards, other people accept other things. And so there's a lot of diversity, and we're debating that literally right now in the United States. I chuckle because I'm on a task committee at NCWS talking about licensure and new model law licensure models. And my assignment in part was to review international licensure, and it is all over the map. There are programs in some countries where if you graduate from an approved university, you automatically become, quote, a professional engineer, or in effect, you become legal to practice. We would say licensed in the United States. Other programs require additional examination and additional experience, not unlike what we require in the United States. The fundamentals in the United States, and so and let me quickly say, I did not look at Saudi Arabia. We have a close kinship with Canada. I know there's somebody here from Canada I saw earlier in the chat room. We have a tacit relationship with Australia, the North Africa, Middle Eastern area. They're a little more Commonwealth. in terms of the way it's operated. But in the United States, this is the fundamentals. And then I'll leave you do the search for your country, your state, whatever, to figure out what the difference is. For us, you have to have an approved degree. Now that approved degree in engineering, in some cases, can be in engineering technology. But that approved degree by the board has to have met rigor and has to have been accredited. Of course, in the United States, we have ABET, which used to stand for the Accreditation Board for Engineering Technology, but they accredit a whole lot more than engineering and technology today. So we just say ABET. ABET does accredit programs internationally. In fact, I think there's programs in Saudi Arabia that are accredited by ABET. I know there are programs in Qatar, UAE, and other Middle Eastern areas. I've worked on some. Then the next step is, once you've got the approved degree, the next step is then the examinations. And as already been suggested, we require two: the fundamentals of engineering examination and the principles and practices of engineering exam. And then the third piece, of course, is experience. Again, remember what I said earlier about NCWS, and in our country, we define education, experience, and examination. The experience piece in many states comes after the fundamentals of engineering exam and before the PPE exam. Many states, on the other hand, a number of states, I'll say, have now allowed individuals to take the PPE exam immediately after the FE exam, and then get your experience following the examinations. And the jury's still out on some of this. We have data that suggests that the PPE exam, again, because it's an examination and because people have to know how to study and take exams, people coming out of college are a little more attuned to the process than people that have been at 4 years, let's say, which is the standard. On the other hand, the knowledge you gain in 4 years of experience hasn't been gained in 6 months after passing the FE. So there's a balance here between getting the information needed to pass the PPE and getting maintaining the ability to pass the mindset required. So there's a balance. So and again, to summarize, in the U.S., 2 examinations, FE, PE, experience, typically 4 years, acceptable degree, and you're licensed.
Thank you, President. What do you think, Professor Mohsen?
Well, all I will say is that I believe in various parts of the world, as long as there is some standard, there is some established way of recognizing engineers as professional engineers. And as Dennis said, I'm familiar with various parts of the world. For example, Lima, Peru, I know their engineers, after they graduate, they have to participate in, there's no exam involved, but they go back to school for a graduate degree, or they go through an extensive training session, the training courses, which takes about 2 years to complete while they are practicing as engineers. So my point is that as long as there is a standard and it is unique to the area, not necessarily country, but there are regions that work together to come up with some established method, I think that would be acceptable.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we almost out of the time. I went through the question in the chat box. I think most of the question I tried to ask for our panel members. On behalf of the panel member and Prince Sultan University, I would like to express our appreciation to all of you who took the time to participate in this session. Lastly, I would like to announce something. Prince Sultan University is organizing an international conference about the sustainability, recent development and innovation. This conference will be in next February, and we have the honor and the pleasure of participation of President Truax. He will join us physically at the campus. I can tell you from now that all student members of AC are start planning and celebrating. And secondly, we are just received the official establishment of the AAC student chapter. I'm very happy that this valuable session was the first activity organized after the official establishment. I would like to thank all of our students and higher management. By the way, I would like to thank the Dr. Abdelhakim Al-Majid, the Dean of College of Engineering. He participated with us today, and Professor Yasser Mansour, the Chairman of Engineering Management Department. Thanks so much for your time, and really it was a great pleasure to have you with us. Many thanks, President Truax. Many thanks, Professor Mohsen. Really, we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Thank you. See you soon.
Also, plan on it.